So we are here in the beautiful city of Marrakech at the ACI World Annual General Assembly, and I'm joined here by Candace McGraw, who is CEO of CVG, or Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport. Candace, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
My first question for you is, how are things actually going at your airport at the moment?
Um, Thankfully, things are improving markedly. We're back to about 85%, almost 90% of our pre-pandemic passenger traffic. Cargo continues to boom. So we are the site of the North American hub for both DHL and Amazon, and I'm pleased to say their cargo traffic continues to grow by double digits year over year.
Fantastic. Now, what has changed with your passengers? What do they want from you now?
I think more options, right? More flights. Everybody's talking about the pent-up demand of travel, and we're seeing it, at CVG as we are kind of globally. Everybody's anxious to get out and travel again.
Now, have you had to change your business model as a result of the pandemic, or maybe the change in passengers?
Well, of course, during the pandemic or the depth of the pandemic, we really cut our expenses markedly, right, and tried to operate as leanly as possible. And so now, as things are rebounding, we feel more confident about being a little more robust in our expenditures in terms of planning for the future, capital programs, etc. We've seen the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, and we're moving ahead full speed.
Fantastic. Now, how many vacancies do you have at the moment? Is it a lot compared to prior to the pandemic?
So actually, in terms of campus-wide, we grew the number of employees. We went from a campus of about 14,000 people to 16,000, primarily because of the growth in cargo. For my own airport authority, we're a team of about 480 people. I currently have a vacancy rate of about 10%. Some of it were, vacancies, people leaving for other career choices, and some, I think, just because of the workforce shortage issues. So we're starting to see that turnaround, thankfully.
And why do you think people, and maybe in particular women, don't want to come into the aviation industry?
Well, I'm glad you asked about women in aviation. I had the opportunity to serve on a panel last year that was convened by the former Secretary of DOT, talking about getting women engaged in the transportation, specifically aviation. How do you attract them? How do you retain them? How do you help them grow their careers? And so I would recommend, there's a great comprehensive report on the FAA website about women in aviation. But really a lot of it were, barriers around entry of not understanding the benefits of aviation, all the vast careers that you can have in this field. I myself started as a lawyer. I never thought of aviation as a career. Some just seeing it as a more masculine career. Not true, right? A lot of women. I think barriers, of course, around childcare, is often an issue. And so I think the report talks about how do you overcome those barriers, how do you get more women attracted to this, and then, of course, then once you're in it, how do you stay in it and build your career and reputation over time.
So, how did you get into aviation then? If you said that you used to be a lawyer, what attracted you?
Well, it's so interesting. So I started my career as a public sector lawyer. And in the U.S., many airports are owned by cities. And I happened to work for a city that owned an airport. And so I just by default, I became their lawyer. And lo and behold, who knew it was such a wonderful, fascinating global industry that I believe, at least in the U.S., is a nice blend of public sector work and just interesting global corporate issues, right? All for the benefit of our passengers and the public to grow the economic benefits. It's a career I love.
Now, a colleague in an airport recently said to me that he said that there was a bit of a disconnect between people that stayed and worked in airports during the pandemic and the new people that have come in, because they felt like we were here during the hard times and they weren't. So I was just wondering, do you see that in your airport, and how do you manage that? How do you integrate the new people with the old?
Well, that's interesting. That's not something I've noticed or I've experienced, at least in my airport, and I haven't heard any of my colleagues mention that. So that's an interesting perspective. Where I thought you were going to go with this is more the people who are the front line that have to be there clean our terminals, that push our snow, take care of our operations out in the field, versus those folks that have the office, administrative
Yeah.
positions in finance, HR, etc. And the disconnect I was seeing there with folks that had to be in the office be on site every day to do their work,
Yeah.
and other people who are working from home. And I found that particularly challenging. And we had a lot of discussion at my airport on what that interaction could and should be during the pandemic, and what it's going to be now that things are more normalized.
So it's definitely something that you're thinking about.
Oh, because for me at least, culture is so important. I have such respect and admiration for every member of my team that I want to make sure they feel valued and valuable, right, to our operation. And I want everybody to feel they're there working for the benefit of the airport, for the community, for our broader region.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Honestly,
That's what they say.
it's true. It's true.
Yeah. And now, what are your lessons learned from the past summer and from COVID-19?
I don't know, perhaps if I have any new lessons that I've learned, but it's reinforced what I always believed, that you have to operate and manage people and lead with transparency and authenticity. That you have to communicate constantly, because in the absence of information, people are just going to make up information and fill in the void, right? And I think going through the pandemic and saying, we don't know what's happening here, right? And we'll learn as we go, and have some trust, and have some grace for your colleagues, right? Because people were fearful in different levels of where they were. So I think just having those authentic conversations became that much more important.
Now, what exciting developments are happening at CVG over the next year?
Yeah, all kinds of things happening at CVG. We're really focused on our capital program, as I said. We've spent a lot of money over the years, a lot of investments in our airfield infrastructure. We just finished a new rental car facility that was appended to our building that opens up new terminal facilities. And then we're also in the process of starting the design of a new FIS facility and those other things. A customs facility, new customs facility.
Yeah, I see. Okay, so plenty to get excited about.
Yes, there is plenty of it. Always in Cincinnati, things to be excited about.
Now, finally, what challenges do you foresee in the next year, and what's on your to-do list as the airport CEO?
So the to-do list, really, challenges continue to be workforce, not necessarily only for us, but for the airport community as a whole. How do we make this a place that people want to be attracted to, want to work at? Because there are a lot of competing choices for employment. So how do we become an employer of choice? One of the things we're really focused on is we've worked with our local transit authority to improve the connectivity of the airport, public transport, and now focused on how do we get a child care facility on or near the airport to provide service 24/7, right? So we can attract and retain more people and diversify and grow our workforce.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Candace.
Thank you.